we're absolutely now transitioning to talk about the incredible work you've been doing in Ukraine, all of these efforts, and we've all been watching. I think people are calling it the first real drone war, right? Commercial technologies flooding the battlefield, and you have personally visited Ukraine, and your drones are being used for mining and other humanitarian purposes. So let's go ahead and walk us through the mining use case in particular.
Yeah, so using multiple sensors on a drone, let's call it a few years ago. We've been actually still had been working on this at that time. Theoretically, you could, find a mine. But there's a lot of techniques and a lot of different sensors. So if it's not a metal mine, if it's a plastic, if it's a ceramic, if it's wood, if it's, chemical, all these different things require different types of sensors. So we've gone through extensive testing to sort and determine, what that sensor package needs to look like. We have a full facility in Texas with ordnance on it, with unexploded dummy unexploded equipment on it that mimic exactly what we need to do in theater, summer surround, all the different types, from multiple countries. And so we've been running through these tests. Now, the reality is right now, what's most important is to determine where mines aren't, right? So because it takes an inordinate amount of time to actually do the demining work. It is still basically, highly trained, sometimes not highly enough trained people, walking through fields with sticks. So the data that we provide isn't always just specifically, here's a mine, right? Or here's a mine, or it's really more about, okay, here's a trench line, here's some new forage, right? As opposed to some of the older forage. Here's some spent ammunition. Here's a burned out something, here's a path that looked like a lot of people walked along. Like those are the things that then give indication as to where mines might be or where they're not. Because if you can determine where they're not, that's where you will save the most amount of time in actually doing the demining work. It's going to take 20 plus years to demine just Ukraine. And for every day of war that happens there, there's an additional 30 days of demining work that has to happen. So the personal consequences of the workers and or the population in this area, not to mention the terror and all the rest of it, this is a big area, to build confidence in, a place like Ukraine and to get it rebuilding. Now, the economic impact in particular in Ukraine because of agriculture, like these are incredibly resilient, tough people. I literally, my last trip over there, a fairly young guy, very industrious guy, his family owns a farm implement dealership over there. And they had designed chains that were on the front of a tractor to go and make sure there was no mines, right?
Oh my
And then
gosh.
they had saws and cedars, right, on the back of it. Like it just, and they're like, well, listen, we can't not do that, so the demining work over there is there'll be 20 years of work, and it will be some of the most meaningful work, and I think some of the most incredible science around sensors and such will come out of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, not to put too fine a point on it, but Cam, you mentioned this UAS AIR, which is Adoption, Innovation, and Research Space Flight Facility, and you're doing some of this testing work in Texas, so that's amazing. And you mentioned this earlier, and we have a really cool picture: humanitarian other relief, blood and medical delivery. So tell us a little bit about this picture.
Yeah, so Revive Soldiers Ukraine, which was a U.S.-based NGO that was doing work in the Ukraine by having clinics and or bringing wounded Ukrainian soldiers to the United States for rehabilitation. At the outbreak of the conflict, got deeply involved in providing humanitarian support, in particular into besieged areas. They had, 30 some ambulances, most of which couldn't move, confiscated, shot, but they couldn't get into, the areas, in particular at the beginning of the conflict. And so they had heard about the work that we were doing in Texas with delivery drones, medical delivery drones. So we have a specialized delivery drone that has a temperature managed box on it. So you can carry things like pharmaceuticals, insulins, EpiPens, organs, blood, that type of stuff. And so they contacted us. We immediately saw the opportunity. We donated 3 drones, tested them in theater over there. They loved them. We loved them. We all learned so much. And so they put in a significant order, which we discounted to the absolute extent we could. And we went over there and learned and helped with this. And so the idea was that, or the idea is, and successfully was that these drones deliver.
So, so Cam, you were saying the idea is that these drones deliver?
Yeah, sorry. So this temperature sensitive box can carry the things like pharmaceuticals and blood and organs and such. And the biggest demand, in particular in Ukraine at that time, was getting insulin into these besieged areas.
Oh, wow.
Which is temperature sensitive, right? And yeah, I mean, you think of like there's so many things you don't think about that are absolute crises for tens of thousands of people or thousands and thousands of people at the least. And so there were some other cargoes as well that were critically needed, but insulin was the big one, and this temperature sensitive box at our system satisfied that.